Ukraine has faced constant attacks on its energy infrastructure since Russia's occupation of Crimea in 2014 already. And these strikes have repeatedly disrupted industry, public services, and left millions of civilians without heat and electricity in midwinter. Julia Kovalev is Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Emergy, a Norwegian-based developer of wind and solar power in Southeast Europe, including Ukraine. And she brings extensive experience from across the energy sector, from leading reforms at Naftogaz, serving as commissioner at the National Energy Regulator, to senior economic roles in the Ukrainian government. And she also represented Ukraine as ambassador to Canada from 2022 to 2024. Now, we are very pleased that she's here with us today to share how Ukraine's energy system is adapting under continuous attack. So please give Julia Kovalev a warm welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's my great pleasure and honor to be here today and with this important discussion about the security and energy security and resilience. And of course, what Ukraine has went through for already 12 years, as you rightly mentioned, since actually the war started by occupation of Crimea and parts of Ukraine territory in the east. We have a lot of lessons that we can share with you, especially since 2022 when Russia started the full-scale invasion. But before that, there is now, I think, a very narrow line between what is the actual warfare and attacks on the energy infrastructure and what was the hybrid wars related to the energy security, and we historically face it in Ukraine. I would like to remind you that for the last 20 years, Russia was using energy resources as a weapon to Ukraine. If you remember, there were several winters in a row starting from 2008, when in the midst of the winter, Russia was cutting the gas supply to the country and trying to get some political leverage and influence on Ukrainian governments. We went through it, and since 2014, the first major reform of pro-European Ukrainian government was to actually to refuse from Russian gas supply and to implement the European market of gas and to cut this dependency, which Russia has been using constantly as a power threat to Ukraine, to Ukrainians' economy, and trying to influence many of the politicians in Ukraine. But coming back to the situation for the last 4 years, with the start of the full-scale invasion, we vividly see that, unfortunately, but the world we live now, see that civil energy objects became the military targets. Started with the first days of the war and Russian occupation of Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. I would like to remind you that this is the biggest nuclear plant in Europe, which is now for 4 years under the occupation. And we see regular reports, including, the alarms from IAEA about the safety, security, and it's a matter not only for us, Ukrainians, it's a matter of safety and security for the whole Europe. Since the start of the war, Russia carried at least 64 major attacks, specifically targeting energy system of Ukraine. During these attacks, they used over 12,000 different types of the drones and around 3,000 of different types of the missiles, including ballistic missiles, which is much harder for the air defense system to intercept. Just according to the recent World Bank assessment, the overall damage for specifically the energy infrastructure for Ukraine is exceeding $24 billion US dollars, and the needs for rebuilding reaching over $90 billion of dollars. But even despite all those challenges, and I'm here more to share with you what are our lessons learned on how to live through the constant attacks, through the significant damage of both the power generation, the transmission lines, the distribution lines, and the wide range of the critical infrastructure and the broader meaning. So what we are sharing today as the view living through this is the need to reduce the strategic dependence on the centralized generation. The Ukrainian energy system was built for the last 50 years with the big power plant concentrated on the specific areas. And when these big attacks are happening and the power plants have been damaged in the system, at one moment you have hundreds of megawatts out of the system. And both for the system operator, for major consumers, and the reliability of the country, it's very hard to quickly adapt if few blocks of the power stations are being in a minute out of the system. So the whole approach now, as we are repairing and providing the policies for more rebuilding of the energy infrastructure, is the focus on decentralized infrastructure, which means more reliable, closer to consumer, and from the standpoint of any military risk, if part of that infrastructure even can be damaged or destroyed, it will have no such a big immediate consequences for the whole power system of the country. Then there is a huge need to protect and expand flexible generation, because the primary targets of Russian attacks were those flexible generation, because it's impossible to be able to provide 24/7 electricity to the consumers if you don't have the power generation. That's why the major attacks from the very start of Russian full-scale invasion was the attacks on those flexible power. And today, as we speak, we still have shortages of power, especially in those peak morning and evening peaks of power consumption, because we lost the significant capacity of specifically the flexible generation. A very important thing that I think what was just presented before is the grid resilience. The grid resilience is another important thing that Ukraine learned. It happened that way that during the night, when Russian tanks crossed Ukrainian border, Ukrainian transmission system operator was just switching to the kind of integrating into the European system. But Russia expanded its attacks also on substations, both the transmission system substations and the substations of the DSO. So building the resilient system that will allow the system operator quickly switch from different types of the generation and move electricity throughout the country to all of the consumers is the reality that we can share with you. One other important thing, and I'll probably finish on that, is the equipment. Many of you who are working on the energy sector, in a peaceful time, there is quite an extensive lead time to get any significant and big equipment, including the transformers, including the cables. And imagine you are the country who are in the war, and you're trying to get this big transformer to replace the one that was damaged, and you get the leading time of 36 months. So the need to expand this production, but also to have the stock of the equipment to be able to quickly repair, restore, is something that need to be also in mind for especially the regulators, the governments, and the TSOs. And in parallel, the very practical thing what we saw is also the standardization, because you have many producers, you have many standards, even from country to country, and being able to standardize it will give all of us jointly in Europe more flexibility and more security when it comes to specific grid maintenance. And last, and I think the very important piece that is not always on the air, it's the preparedness of the personnel of all of the energy sector. We need to be able to train the people so they can quickly address those challenges that we all can face, whether it's the cyber attacks, whether it's the hybrid attacks, or the physical attacks that we have. Today, Ukrainian personnel of both the grid operators, the generation, are those who are able to make a miracle, to do what probably in the many European countries will take days, weeks, and months, just in several hours, to be able to provide the electricity. So we are, I think, sometimes underestimating how important is the investment into the people who daily work in the energy sector, because that is up to them and up to all of us to ensure security. Thank you.